Ram trucks built to serve.
Back here on First Things First, now joined by Ethan Sherwood Strauss, who just released his new book, The Victory Machine, The Making and Unmaking of the Warriors Dynasty. Ethan, good morning. We're going to jump right in. There's so much to cover here. The book itself covers such a wide range of topics, all things Warriors. I think the widest, there it is, the widest is probably what went down with Kevin Durant. You said before the book was published, you reached out to KD, and he texted you back. I want to make sure I got this right. He wrote, bleep you, bleep your sources, and let me just round this out, bleep your book, which pretty much covers that. I'm curious, and I think you thoroughly enjoyed it, too. Has Kevin Durant reached out to you since the book has been released? And if not, how surprised are you by that?
He hasn't. I'm not surprised by that. I think maybe that's a sign of progress. I don't know. He used to really monitor what was being said about him in the Bay Area media, and perhaps now in a new situation, he may have moved on. But I did appreciate that. If you reach out to somebody for comment, it's not always as colorful as that. Sometimes it's just a no comment if people don't want to deal with you or no response. So that response was just fine with me.
I can't recommend the book strongly enough. It's a super easy, fast read, and it's not just about Kevin Durant. If you're an NBA fan, it gets into the not only pre-Durant, the pre-Steph Warriors. It gives you a good look on Joe Lacob, on Bob Myers. It's a really, really well-done book, but we're obviously going to focus most of this time on the Durant piece of it. I walked away from the book, Ethan, saying, kind of confirming that if there's one thing Durant could fix and it would change his life, it would be an insecurity level that is not commensurate with his talents, abilities, or successes. Do you agree with that? And having been around him for a few years, if you agree, what do you think the source of that is?
I mean, I might agree with that, but this is what's so complicated, is that the great players often have lopsided personalities. I mean, it's not a normal thing to achieve so much. Just look at Michael Jordan in The Last Dance. He wasn't the nicest guy in the world. And you have to wonder with Kevin Durant, I mean, he's always been a basketball genius, but you have to wonder if that insecurity and trying to prove to everybody that you belong and that you're great, that insecurity might have been the fuel that made him as great as he was. And maybe we would tell stories about it like we do MJ cheating at cards, about how he's so competitive. But with KD in the internet age, we almost see too much of it, and it just leads to more criticism than it does to a hagiography.
Ethan, I want to follow up there. Let's alternate universe for a moment. The Warriors, the first season goes exactly the way it actually did. But starting with that parade, it becomes just a tribute to Durant. There's none of the kind of the steps, the PR guy and GM don't step in it with saying, well, Steph earned it. The folks like me in the media say Kevin Durant has clearly become the greatest player in the world. If all of that had happened, is Kevin Durant still a Warrior?
I think so. I think there's all this focus on Draymond, the blow up with Draymond. And I think it's pretty clear with Kevin Durant. I mean, what do you guys think? I can't claim to read his mind, but what do you guys think? Do you think that he's more influenced and bothered by the external conversation or the internal conversation in the locker room? I think we all know what the answer is to that particular question. And what happened is KD beats LeBron in the finals, and the conversation the next season doesn't adjust. We say, you joined a 73-win team. We don't think you're the best player. We still think LeBron is the best player. And then he does it again, and the conversation is the same. If you talk to people around the Warriors, that really bothered him immensely, because it seemed like he got a raw deal from his perspective.
Ethan, congratulations on the book. Draymond had some interesting quotes yesterday. He was doing a compare-contrast with his Warriors and Jordan's Warriors after The Last Dance. And his main issue was Phil put The Last Dance literally on the first page. This is it for us. And he thought that helped galvanize the team. And he compared that to the Warriors, where it was sort of the elephant in the room, he called it. Durant's probably going to leave, but we're not really addressing it. And that was a constant stress the entire time. Do you feel like that was well, I guess, what are your thoughts on Draymond's take on the comparisons of the Bulls season and the Warriors season?
I think he's right about that. But, when people say that, Kevin Durant, he didn't have to tell anybody anything. It's his decision. I also understand that as well. But here's the thing with the elephant in the room. Yeah, it was an elephant in the room. But you got to combine it with the other factors, such as KD was pretty miserable that season. If KD was happy, if the elephant in the room was happy, if it was a happy elephant, then I don't think there would have been as much of an issue with them being in limbo. They could have dealt with it. If he was happy-go-lucky, smiling, hey, let's win this championship, and I'm going to figure out the contract later on, I think that situation would have been amenable. But it was the combination of not saying it and also not being very happy that I think was a drag on the other guy.
I think, Ethan, one of the takeaways from the book was just how seemingly unfulfilled Kevin Durant seems to be on a day in and day out basis, that he's on this constant quest to find something. He just is not exactly sure what that something is. I'm curious what you think, which decision that he made was more interesting to you, leaving the Thunder for a 73-win Warriors team or leaving the Warriors after 3 straight trips to the finals to join the Nets. Which decision did you scratch your head a little bit more with?
I think the second decision, and because of Nets. I mean, the Nets part, let's face it, I don't want to offend any Brooklyn Nets fans who might be watching. I know that they do exist, even though not in as large numbers as Knicks fans do. But it's just a franchise that you don't associate a lot of lore and glory with. And they had some good pieces, and his friend Kyrie Irving was going there. But it just seems like a very just strange decision. Maybe it will be validated. Maybe he'll win a championship in Brooklyn and he can laugh at us. But not the leaving the Warriors part, that made sense. The story had run out, right? But going to the Nets, that was my reaction.
Ethan, I think it was the first time you and I ever spoke one-on-one, it was, I think, via Twitter DM, was after one of the few times he was universally praised by the media was when he gave real basketball analysis about being top locked against the Clippers defense. Yep. And everyone's like, wow, it's so informative. But that was also during a bit of a Cold War between he and Steve Kerr in media comments. Kerr would say one thing and KD would come out and be like, oh, I thought we were about joy, not playing with anger. Kerr would say, I want Kevin to be more aggressive, and KD would say, I just play within the flow of the offense. And you talk about that in your book. It's a tough question. Was Steve Kerr relieved, do you believe, by Kevin Durant's decision?
I don't think he was relieved because I don't think he saw it going any other kind of way. I think he was relieved to be without that particular issue. I think at times this season, losing a bunch of games was trying for Kerr. But people and institutions typically, they care more about their own power within the institution than how the institution is doing. And I think coaches, they like to coach as much as they like to win. And so, yeah, I think there was an element that, thank God this is all over. This was good for what it was. It was great to win championships. It was great to compete. But, yeah, I think there was an element of relief there.
I want to follow up with a Steph Curry question. I don't know if KD will read the book. If he does, I'm sure one of his takeaways will be, once again, Ethan just loving on Steph. Steph can do no wrong. I mean, the golden boy does everything right. But what is true is Steph did something unprecedented. And for folks like me, it was something that was so unprecedented, I criticized him a bit for it, which was, why do you want this guy on your team? Don't you think you guys can win without him and you should go through him? And I know there are folks within the Warriors that believe the only reason they didn't win the title in 16 was Draymond's suspension. It wasn't LeBron, it wasn't Kyrie, it was Draymond's suspension, or they would have been 2-time defending champs. If they believed that and believed they could have continued winning, given how it ended and how uncomfortable not only the last season, but seemingly the last season and a half were, do you think Steph has any regret about recruiting KD the way he did when Steph was the one guy who could have said, no, this ain't happening?
I don't think he does, mainly because Steph just isn't somebody who typically has regrets. He's a very positive mindset kind of guy, but also I think what's different with what happened with Steph versus KD is this. KD was always going for that number one spot. It was in his midst. He was a high school player, one of the greatest college players we've ever seen as a freshman. Somebody like LeBron James, similar, the chosen one on Sports Illustrated. Steph Curry briefly became the face of the league, kind of out of nowhere. Nobody around him, even if they thought he was good, better than what others thought he was, and even if Steph thought he was better than what others thought he was going to be the number one guy in the league. And I think that spotlight burned bright. Steph mania was crazy. I was at practices. People were jumping out of bushes trying to get an autograph or a picture, and it was just stressful. You know, there were cars that were following him on the freeway like 30 miles. And so I think that an element in all of this is that Steph did enjoy not having to bear all of that after making that decision.
Hey, Ethan, you recently said that building a dynasty. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Wilds. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay.
I jumped in. I got excited. We have Ethan with us. So
it's a good book. Ethan, it's called the Making and Unmaking of the Warriors Dynasty. Are you sure, and is Warriors ownership sure that this dynasty is over? They've got a lottery pick coming up. Everybody's going to be healthy again. What's Joe Lacob and the ownership team? What are they thinking about the end of their dynasty?
I mean, Joe Lacob would reject the premise of this. Joe Lacob is one of those speak it into existence, chest puffed out. If I say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. This Andrew Wiggins deal is better than what you could possibly imagine. We are completely rebuilt, and we are going to take the league by storm. That's his mentality. I think that the people below him have more of a realistic take. Steve Kerr said before this whole lockdown of really the country